Well, hey guys, welcome into the Next Man Up podcast. I'm Mark, he's John, you know that. And by now you should also know that we are honored to be with you for another episode. And if this is your first time, or if you've been part of the community for a while, thank you, because we are so grateful that you have chosen to spend your time with us to be part of this community that is about being and raising healthy and godly men. John, I got a question for you. Have you ever Googled, what is a man?
No.
Okay. Well, I did recently, and it produced some interesting things.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. Please tell us.
So there's no way I can do an exhaustive list, of course. But here's a random sample of a few things that stood out to me. First page hits. So there was an Esquire article, the magazine Esquire. And as you might imagine, it's about like physique and dress and that prowess type of mindset, whether it's the physical prowess or even the kind of that sexual prowess. So no surprise that's kind of a given. I did find a book and a ministry by the same name, What is a Man? So that was interesting, encouraging.
Okay.
And then the on the other end of the spectrum is a website out of Michigan with an article that starts like this: what attaches me to this label of a man? Does it serve what I want for my life? 2 questions to start the article. Don't waste your time. It's not worth reading. But clearly this author is struggling with male and female as the article plays out. So it's a big question. We could go to Google, but who knows what you're going to get when you go there seeking advice to a big question like this.
Yeah, you may have enticed me, but I probably won't. Just because that's I can only imagine what you find.
So here's another more comical perspective on this question: what is a man? So I don't remember exactly how old my boys were, but I'm picturing them in like the 6 to 4, 7 to 5 age range, and they're hanging out with their cousins. And their cousins are 3 or 4 years older than them at that point. I guess they're still 3 or 4 years older, but cousins are 3 or 4 years older. Not a whole lot of wisdom still at 10 or 11.
Like the Little Rascals or something?
Well, these cousins were girls too, so that adds more color to the picture. Somehow in the course of conversation as they're traveling, relayed through their grandfather, my father-in-law, who's driving them on this little adventure, the question of how do you know you're a man comes up. And nowhere in any of the answers I would have come up with was the one that the triplet cousins suggested to my 2 boys.
Okay.
If you can pee for more than 15 seconds, then you're a man.
Oh, it's a time thing.
How in the world those girls had that answer, even if they were just purely joking, but it didn't come through. The story didn't come to us as if they were joking. The story came to us as if the girls were serious and the boys were eating it up. And eventually the boys told us that too. They've since forgotten that. They remember the story. They don't remember the moment. But like at 7, 6 years old, like these boys are learning that what does it take? How do you know you're a man? Well, then you got to pee for 15 seconds.
I'm a little speechless here, but that's hysterical. I guess we'll add that to the list. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just, like there's so much fun in that story.
Right.
But it does, I think, reinforce one of the themes that we keep coming back to over and over in this context, and that is, it's a big question. It's a question that boys in particular want to know, probably earlier than they realize or they're able to articulate it.
Hmm.
And it's important for us to be able to point them in a direction that serves them well, because you know as well as I do, back to Googling what is a man, there's all kinds of answers to that question, and most of them are just not healthy or beneficial.
Hmm. Yeah, a few are probably going to go in a character kind of direction versus a possessional exterior look direction, which shouldn't surprise us, right?
Right, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like it's too easy to define manhood by characteristics of doing or characteristics of appearance,
Hmm.
those things that fluctuate from person to person based on our wiring, based on the genes that we were given. Like that just, it misses the mark. It's not big enough. It's not clear enough. It's not universal enough in that. Like I've used this example before. I'm five. I call myself 5'10". My boys argue. They say I'm 5'9". I'm a $150. I'm never going to stack up against Dwayne Johnson. I'm just not. Or Chris
Hmm.
Hemsworth, or any of the other macho physique guys that are in the celebrity sphere. I'm just not. I didn't have the genes for that. So, in order to get to a definition of what it means to be a man, we've got to go past that exterior. We've got to go more into the interior and into things that we can develop. So, yes, you're right on. Like the inner character qualities, those inner characteristics are more certainly a better direction to go than how long you can stand over the toilet, and certainly better than what we're going to find in Esquire or in an article from someone who's really questioning a lot about themselves and what it means to them to be a man. And anyway, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself and maybe a bit off on a tangent. But yes, John, you're right. Like we're going in our conversation today, we're gonna move the needle more toward the inside, consistent with how we've been talking about manhood, fatherhood, all that type of thing. And I think we're gonna put maybe a stake in the ground today in a way that we haven't yet in this show, in this context. And I can go a little bit deeper into that as we go, but that's where we're headed today.
So, is there something that's sort of nudging you that this is the time to put the stake in the ground?
Yeah, good question. Yes, I think so. Last episode, talking to Bryce, he used the language, as did you, of having a target, having a target that we're aiming for as men, as fathers, but also the target that we're aiming our boys toward. And I like that language, the way he used it. So we've been in and around this conversation for a number of episodes for a number of years now. But why now? Why put a stake in the ground now? And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, my own thinking has evolved on this. And I'll share some of my story as we go, and it'll be a repeat for some. But my own thinking has evolved to a point where I feel like I've got a big enough picture of how to define manhood in those inner character qualities that I'm comfortable with. Prior to this point, I had something, but it has really evolved in the over the last year, really, it's involved in thinking and some writing on the subject. And even in some of the episodes that I was recording last year, some of my solo episodes, Essentials of Manhood, just exploring some of those characteristics, I think I'm to a point where I feel like I've got something that is worthy of suggesting and putting out there. I guess maybe another thought is up to this point, I've hesitated really to say specifically, directly, that this is what it means to be a man, definitive, like I'm putting the stake in the ground. Because I've wanted guys to really wrestle with it themselves in a way that I did, or in a way that really deepens the experience, rather than I'll use language from a conversation that we've recorded but isn't going to air for a bit yet. Rather than telling guys what to think, inviting them to grow in how they think. And so that's kind of been the bias in our journey in this conversation, in this space up to this point. But I'm also recognizing that there's maybe a way to help facilitate the how you think by providing some markers, some ideas, some structure. And
Sure.
again, holding it loosely, like you don't have to think this way. That's not necessarily what we're saying. We're not necessarily telling you what you have to think, but we're giving you some suggestions and some ideas and inviting you to think about them and grow in how you think about them, and really make it your own. There's a guy that I work with in a different context, more in the coaching context. He likes this language. In the evolution of learning something new, there is the adopting part where you kind of, you're like, okay, I get it, and I'm working with it. There's the adapting part where it becomes more customized to you and your context. And then there's the advancing part where you take it even further and really make it your own, like the customization and specification really of who you are. So that adopt, that adapt, that advance. I would love if in the course of what we're going to share today, that initial stage is adopt or maybe adapt, and then guys take it further and begin to really advance it for themselves in their context or in their influence as they're interacting with other fathers or other men. And so it seemed like now is a good time. I guess maybe another reason, maybe the third reason, is there is so much confusion. There is so much confusion out in culture, to the point where, and this is a different topic, and I'm not going to go far down this path, but to the point where culture has come to believe that gender is fluid, and that it's more of a, I think maybe today I'll be on this side, and maybe tomorrow I'll be on that side. And I'm not trying to make light of those really struggling with gender dysphoria, but it's what's happening today is more than just gender dysphoria, and it's creating all kinds of confusion. So one of the ways you eliminate confusion, at least about where we come down, is, well, let's define it. Let's put a definition out there that we can work with and together continue to advance. Hey guys, quick pause before we continue on with this conversation. I am looking for 6 to 8 dads who want to level up their fathering game. I'm talking about going deep in your own transformation so you can show up at your best for and with your kids. This will be a 10-week journey together, including group coaching, deep discussion, video training, and you'll also get an advanced copy of a book that will be released sometime into the future. All of this is part of this group experience to help you be at your best as a dad and for your kids. Now, look, I know this isn't for everybody, but if this is resonating with you, if you feel this stirring interest in you, all I'm asking for you right now is to just let me know. head on out to the website, thenextmanup.com/dad group, and just get signed up. There's more information to come down the road. But all I'm asking right now is just to let me know that you are interested so that I can get you additional information. The web address, once again, is thenextmanup.com/dad group. Head on out there, get yourself signed up, and I will be back in touch with you soon. Okay, back to the conversation.
Those three words, I think that's helpful regardless of what it is you're trying to define or address. I that's worth listening to the episode right there. The adopt, advance. What was the last one? No,
Adopt, adapt, and
Yes.
advance. Yeah.
Yeah, because that can apply to all kinds of different things in your life.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let me backtrack just a little bit and cover some of my own story. And John, you can share some of yours because we've got different experiences. But I'm in my late 20s. I have at least one son at that point. Second one is either on the way or recently born, and I'm wrestling with like, am I a man? Have I arrived yet? And when I tell the story, it's like I wasn't confused about gender. I wasn't confused about male, female. It's just I didn't know had I arrived, and if so, what those markers were. And those that have heard the story before know that I came across a documentary about a culture, a tribe of people in the South Pacific, Pentecost Island, within the island country of, or the country of islands called Vanuatu. Anyway, they're called land divers. And I'm watching this documentary where these men and these young men, and even some what looked like maybe 12, 13, 14-year-old boys, were climbing up this tower, this rickety looking tower, tying vines to their legs, and then they were diving off the tower head first. And you can picture bungee jumping, but without all the safety protocols and without elasticity in the rope. Like, they got to the end and there was not much give in the rope. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is just weird. This is bizarre. It's like the year 2000-ish, maybe a little bit later. And I'm like, really? We still do stuff like this in the 21st century? And so I had just this fairly judgmental bias toward what they were doing, although it was clear that it mattered to them. Like, it was meaningful in their culture and society. And it wasn't just the men that were participating, the women and the children were singing and dancing and celebrating. It was a big ritual thing. But I didn't get it until it was as if God turned the light on in my mind, and I realized, oh, this tribe has defined, at least in part, what it means to be a man. And this is how they demonstrate that: the courage, the warrior type of mentality, the bravado and bravery. It clicked for me, like, this is what it means to be a man in this culture. And not only are the men celebrating it, the boys and the young children are looking forward to it. The women are celebrating with them. Like, it was a whole deal. And it dawned on me, I didn't have that. Now, I'm afraid of heights, and I wouldn't want to do that anyway. Like, the way that they accomplished it is from our standpoint in culture, it's a little bizarre and quite dangerous. In fact, in the documentary, they were talking about people that they didn't get up. They were carried away and they were gone, or they limped away and were forever maimed as a result. So it, like, super dangerous. It doesn't make sense for us to do it that way, but we're not doing anything. And when I reflected back on my own life, great parents, great example. I never had that moment where I crossed over the threshold from boyhood into the community of men. And I knew in that moment, that's what I missed. And so it set me down the course of exploring initiation, rites of passage, doing that with my own boys, and then ultimately the start of the Next Man Up. Like that's the genesis for what's now evolved to even this conversation here. But along the way, I really had to wrestle with, okay, what does it mean to be a man? And how do you get there? And so like that was the first moment for me. And as I said, my thinking and understanding has evolved quite a bit since then in the last 20 plus years. But that was it. That was the catalyst for me. And I think the inspiration, I know it was the inspiration, but it's cool to think about it as the inspiration that set me down this course, first for my boys, and then that nudge from fathers saying, hey, there's more men out there, there's more fathers out there that need to hear what you've experienced. They need to hear your story, and they need the encouragement and the inspiration to do some of this work in their own lives and as fathers in their family. But that's where it all began, asking that question. In essence, I was asking, what does it mean to be a man? Although it came out in the form of, have I arrived? Like when did it happen? And if so, when did it happen? Because like I don't feel it.
Mm-hmm. So in this work that you've done, when you've engaged other dads in particular, have you found that to be true, that they've all had pretty much the same journey?
So I think the same question, yes. Whether they asked it out loud or really wrestled with it, the question was there. And for the most part, the guys that I've talked to in conversation, even some of the early podcast conversations we've had, I'm asking, well, when did you become a man, or what is your definition of manhood? And most guys don't have an answer. They don't know when they became a man because they never had a process, and they haven't really wrestled with, well, what does it mean? What does it look like? And so like it's the rare exception that a father has really worked through this for himself and is applying it at home with his boys. Which I think just continues to speak to there's an opportunity and there's a need here, which is why we continue to have these conversations that we do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious your story, John. I've been doing a lot of the talking so far. I know you lost your father when you were 12, which had a significant impact on how you continue to grow into your adult years. But I'm curious your experience with
Mm-hmm.
this question or with this type of wrestling.
I can't really say that I've wrestled with it, not unlike what you just said. Why or why not? I don't know. I haven't analyzed that. As you just said, my journey's been different. So I don't, it's almost as if subconsciously at age 12,
Like that's when it happened.
like, okay, you're it, tag, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, was it, but never said, never acknowledged in any way, but probably in my own mind, um, I can't think of another time where I felt like, oh, this is the significant event or mind shift or anything. So yeah, my journey can't, it's not normal.
Where are you? I know you've got a few sisters. Where are you in the
Mm,
birth order?
third, a four.
Do you remember feeling as if, even though it wasn't stated or Like nobody came to you and said, "Hey, sorry, you've been promoted now." Do you
Hmm.
remember feeling like behavior toward you changed, like expectations changed, or maybe did some of your older sisters pick up more of that responsibility once your dad died?
Mm, yeah, it's hard to say because I mean we're going down a lane here, but you're in a family that's just lost their dad, and mom has become a single mom with four kids between the age of 10 and 17. There's a lot going on,
Mm,
and you move a year later, one child goes off to college. There's a lot of transition happening all at the same time, and I can't say behavior changed toward me. I don't think so. If I'd have been older, probably at age 12, no. Um, yeah, so we just sort of pulled our bootstraps up and kept walking,
yeah, you
so
did
to
what you
speak.
had to do
Yeah,
to
right.
keep on living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and it also makes sense that that was the switch that was flipped for you, even if you didn't understand it at 12, or you
Mm-hmm.
didn't have another male voice in your life to say this is what's happening. It would make sense that that you experienced a bit of that battlefield promotion,
Mm-hmm.
because like I can't imagine what that's like. I think about losing my dad today, and recording this, I'm 49, right? So like, I've got all that years of experience and wisdom, and I still can't imagine what it's going to be like without him. Let alone what it would have been like at 12.
But I will add, it, people can't see me, but I'm smaller and thinner than you are. So, you know, uh, there certainly has been throughout my life that type of temptation, a comparison kind of deal of, well, I'm never going to be that
Mm.
image. Is that a thing? Do I need to worry about that? Do people see me differently? That kind of stuff. But I'm sure my dad being a pastor, being in a pastor's home, and being in the church all my life, I've never really been drawn to that temptation that the Esquire article guy.
Mm.
I've never been drawn to. I have to be that. It's always been more of the character, spiritual direction of life that determines, am I really being the son of God, the child of God, the man of God that is putting out the image of God.
So hearing you say that is prompting me to think of maybe another reason why up to this point, or prior to getting going with the next man up, I was just a little hesitant in making any type of declarative statement,
Mm-hmm.
and also at the same time a reason why I've been down this path in the way that I'm down it, and it's because of this. Like often the perspective that we get of manhood is like the military guy, or picture that SEAL Team 6 leader. Like that is often, unfortunately, the image that we have of the quintessential man, which like that kind of fits into that Esquire or worldly definition, but it's we also find that inside of Christendom too. So I'm never going to have the big burly beard and the muscles. I'm not a hunter. I don't ride Harleys. I don't ride motorcycles. So like I don't have those things that I can point to, which is I think another reason why it turned me inward into these inner qualities, because I know a bunch of guys like me and like you who don't as well. And that doesn't make us lesser males and them greater males. Like that's not the right comparison or the right conclusion. And yet, if we're not careful, we can sometimes feel like that. Let me say it this way. Sometimes guys feel like they need to prove their manhood by what they drive or how they hunt or the length of their beard. And sometimes guys feel like they're hiding because they don't have those things. And those are two extremes, neither of which are healthy. And so to find that balance of just being who you are authentically, how you were created as male, regardless of what you look like or what you're interested in, like that's the sweet spot that I want to find, which again, it's not in the outward or in the doing as much as it is the inward and in the being, with an eye toward that masculine energy. Does that make sense? Is that you tracking with me?
Yeah, and just acknowledge, I'm sure there's others out there like me. I can be asinine enough to go against the norm anyway, just to do so. So, like, I drive a yellow Fiat. I'll just say it.
It's a cool looking car, by the way. I've seen it.
But if is that a manly car? Whatever. I don't care.
Well, our conversation continued, guys, for quite some time after this, including getting to these character qualities, this definition of what it means to be a man that I mentioned a couple of times. But we're going to break this episode here, keep it around the 30-minute mark, and turn this into a two-parter. So next week, we'll get into more specifics around the first 4 characteristics that I developed and how it's evolved into another 4, and where that takes us in the conversation is to some pretty good places. But hopefully you're enjoying this so far, and you're captured by this idea of adopting, adapting, and advancing. We're sharing this with you not to tell you what to think, but to invite you to really wrestle with this yourself and to give you some prompts and some suggestions along the way. And so that's what I'm encouraging you to do between now and our next episode, where we actually get into it, and then continuing on after that as you really work through, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a healthy and godly man? Okay, that's it for this week. Be back same time, same channel next week for part 2, the conclusion of this episode. Until then, guys, adios. To send us your comments or questions, you can email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. The theme music is by Jacob Stanifer at Jacob Stanifer Music, and this show is part of the NRT Podcast Network.